When we discuss the risk pooling or inventory consolidation, we basically show that if we look into the inventory cost plus the ordering cost, consolidating inventories to fewer places basically reduces the total cost of supply chain. But in reality, whenever you consolidate to fewer locations, you have to also pay more transportation costs. So in this unit, we will basically discuss the transport strategy and how to include the transportation cost into the overall cost structure, and then evaluate alternatives. Similar to the other units, we need to first discuss how can we measure the performance of a transportation system, and there are different metrics. We will touch on them briefly. First one is the average transit time. This is basically how long does it take to ship a product from location A to location B. That metrics or transit time, average transit time, is a good indicator of the performance. For example, I might have two systems. One of them has average transit time of 5 and the other one has 6. So I may choose 5 over 6 because it takes shorter time to transport the product. But this information by itself may not be enough information, so we would like to consider a few other things. One of those things is the basically transit time variability. Yes, 5 days is less than 6, and therefore we might conclude to use that first system, but in reality perhaps that 5 days also could have been 10 days or 1 day. Right? If that is the equal probability, then we need to consider how variable that 5 or 6 days. If I draw a very simple graph, for example, I might have these two systems, and let's say their delivery dates follows inventory normal distribution. This is 5 days, and there might be another one. It is 6 days, but this is the sorry, this is a terrible figure. This is the distribution, right? On average, this figure shows that it is more reliable. The spread out is lesser, so I might prefer the second one, because although on average it is 6 days, most of the deliveries happens close to that 6 days compared to this first figure. The average is lower, but then also I might see very high numbers. And that is basically the variability, in transit time variability. Loss and damages are also very important. A few years ago, Amazon had a little bit of problem with the damaged deliveries when they shipped with UPS. Of course, Amazon was an excellent company, or still is an excellent company. So whenever they got the complaint from customers saying that the product was damaged, they would ship immediately a new one to make sure that the customer gets the next product as soon as possible. But this additional shipment was causing more supply chain expenses basically, and they had to deal with insurance companies to get their money back, or through UPS get their money back. To solve the issue, Amazon started tracking UPS deliveries more carefully. As a result, basically they were able to reduce the damaged or lost product to the UPS, because they would always send an email saying that, you know, how was your delivery? Was there any damage? Was the packaging satisfactory, and so forth? All this was basically to get rid of the damaged product deliveries. Now, there are some other companies, or there are some other situations you want to look into some other metrics. For example, the availability of service. There might be a perfect company operating somewhere in the US, but if it is not in the region you are interested in, then that is not part of your evaluation. Capability is similar to availability. There again might be a perfect company operating in some region, even in your region, but you need, for example, air-conditioned truck, and this company don't have it. So If they don't have the capability, then you are not going to be interested in the service. Another important point could be the frequency of movement. For example, this company might be very good at delivering the products without any issue, but they just work or make deliveries only on Mondays or only on Wednesday, or not enough frequency. In that case, their service may not be the perfect fit for your company, so you will just basically eliminate them from the pool for the consideration. There might be some other considerations as well. Some of them might be tangible or intangible. For example, some companies look into their suppliers and see if they have corporate responsibility. For example, if you would like to work with Google or Apple, you need to show them that you are sustainable, or you have sustainability activities in place trying to reduce your carbon footprint, if you are not carbon neutral at least. Right? So those are the important things when those some companies look into when evaluating transport systems. There are also cost components to a transportation system. One of them is the line haul rate. This is basically picking a product from your origin facility and delivering it to the destination facility. That will be some cost associated with it, and you get this cost given by the transportation company. Some companies may not have line haul or door-to-door deliveries. Instead, they may have terminal deliveries, right? You can take the product to their terminal and then they ship it to the next or the destination terminal. From there, you have to, take the product to your customer location or your other facility. So terminal delivery is usually coordinated with local deliveries. One example of terminal delivery could be the railroad. So you have to take the product to the railroad and then they deliver to the nearest railroad station, and from there you have to take the product and make the final deliveries. There may be some other cost component. One of them is the accessorial cost. Basically, especially there might be different types of accessory cost, but one of the most famous one is the fuel surcharge. Fuel surcharge especially become very famous, I guess, after the 2007-2008 surcharge. I'm sorry. 2007-2008 gas prices increases. For example, there might have been some companies signing contract based on $2 gas prices, and this transportation company told the customer that they will basically deliver for a certain amount, but then gas prices hit $4. In that situation, if the transportation companies tries to do business, they are going to bankrupt. They don't have the financial capability to deal with 100% cost increase, right? So what they do is basically they sign these contracts where they pass the fuel charge to the customer, right? And not all customers might be willing to do it, but that is the business if they want to get the service, and that becomes basically the fuel surcharge. And if the fuel cost goes down, then they get less fuel surcharge. If it goes up, it increases as well. There might be some other charges. One of them is stop of privilege. For example, let's say you have a location in Cal Station, and this facility delivers to Navasota, Cypress, Texas, and Houston, Texas. Of course, easy way to do this job is perhaps shipping 3 trucks to each location, but it is also possible that none of these locations have enough demand to warrant a full truckload. In that case, you may basically ask the transportation company to stop at Navasota and Cypress before they stop at Houston, and make deliveries at those locations. Of course, the transportation company is going to spend some time for loading, unloading those deliveries for each additional location. So they would charge you some additional cost, and usually it is called stop of privilege, right? Overall, because you are shipping a single truck, you are going to save money, but the transportation company is going to spend more time than just shipping something to Houston, Texas. So you gotta pay for those additional stopping locations. There are different types of transportation choices. One of them is the intercity carriers. These are air transportation, basically airlines, trucks, rails, water, and pipes. Then we have small shipment carriers. These are the famous companies like UPS, Federal Express, FedEx, USPS, and some package express companies. Bus package express companies are not really common in US, but for some countries, basically buses, in addition to carrying people, they can carry also the products for some fee, right? We have coordinated services. There are different names for different combination. The most famous one is the piggyback. In this case, basically you use truck and rail to deliver products. For example, you may pick up something, take it to the rail station, and then put it in a rail car, take it to the destination. That would be a piggyback. If I approach the problem similar way, birdieback is basically you use truck and airline or air transportation, and fishyback is basically truck and ships are used together. Freight forwarders, these are basically intermediaries. They bring customers and transportation companies together. They match them, and for that service they get paid. You can have some shipper association, customer associations. All of those are going to be your agents. And finally, we can use cars, bicycle, taxis, human and electronic forms of transportations. Now, when we try to use a different mode of transportation, we usually prefer certain type of products on those. Air shipments are usually dedicated to very high value, time sensitive products, right? Then we have trucks, moderately high value, time sensitive products. Many finished and semi-finished goods travels through the trucks. Rail is primarily for low valued products like raw materials, but it can also be used for semi-finished or finished product transportation as well, if it is well planned. We use water transportation for low value products in a domestic environment, or high valued products transportation internationally. For example, almost all the products coming from Asia and China comes through water transportation. And finally, we have pipe transportation. This is for gas and natural petroleum products. Right? In terms of volume, of course, railroads, these numbers for US only. Railroads are the largest portion of the transportation. Then we have trucks and inland waterways. Oil pipelines also carries a significant amount of product, and finally air carries less than 1% of the total deliveries. Right? Air transportation is generally fast over long distances, and it has a fair relative variability. Water transportation is slow, moderately reliable. Bringing a product from China to US takes a couple of weeks with water transportation versus a couple of hours with air. Pipe transportation is very reliable, but also very slow. Trucks are moderately fast and reliable. Rail is slower and less reliable than truck. Right. and there are some cost numbers if you are interested in knowing. Right? This slide we basically kind of touched on them before, so I'm gonna just skip them. Right. When companies give a transportation cost based on distance, one way is basically having a minimum price or cost for up to a distance. This could be, of course, zero, right? Sometimes you go buy some stuff and they may say in-town deliveries are free, but if you are, let's say, living in Nevasota buying furniture in Carl Station, you may need to pay a certain amount of money, and then after a point, let's say 250 miles, again, it is just a single price at that point, and that might be your blanket price. When we look into the transportation cost by volume, as we all know, as the amount increases, you usually get a lower cost. Right? When we work on this transportation problem, we will study a couple of problems. One of the most important one is the mode service selection. Basically, this refers to a situation where you have to choose truck, rail, or air transportation over others. We will also learn about the fleet planning. One of them is the routing problems. Basically, if you have to visit, let's say, Navasota, Houston, Dallas, and Waco, in which order would you go visit these cities? One way is, of course, starting from College Station, driving to Waco, then Dallas, go to Houston, on the way to College Station, stop at Navasota, and then end up in College Station. So this seems to be a very good plan. Not so good plan could be, of course, you start at College Station again. First you drive to Navasota, then you go to Dallas, then you drive to Houston, and then Waco, and come back to College Station. Now, I said this is not a good plan based on the distance, of course, but there might be some other requirements forcing this situation. For example, your appointment with the customers, right? The Navasota customer wants to see you early in the morning, and then Waco customer perhaps wants to have a dinner with you, right? You have to schedule all those things and then make sure that you are covering them in certain orders, right? There is also shipment consolidation or freight consolidation, but we are not going to discuss that one in detail.